Hello, welcome to JSG International, where we break down the complexities of U.S. trade, customs, and federal regulations in a way that matters to you. Today, we're diving into one of the most critical aspects of U.S. immigration law, federal human smuggling laws under Title 18 U.S. Code. We're going to talk from smuggling operations to employer sanctions. These laws carry severe penalties for violations impacting individuals, businesses, and entire industries. We'll cover um, key provisions, including eight U.S. Code sections, which are 1324, 1323, 1324, 1324A, B, C, and D, which each playing a crucial role in enforcement, employer and liability, and fraud prevention. It is very important. So stay tuned as we break it all down, because this is a hot topic right now, and pretty much it's what's going on. So we need to bring this topic. So if you ever wonder what happens when transportation company, airline, or ship owner illegally brings undocumented aliens into the U.S., um, we're going to talk about those sections also, which is unlawful transportation of aliens, which is a U.S. Code 1323, and it covers who is liable, who can be liable, who can be held responsible. According to U.S. Code 1323, it is not just smugglers or traffickers who can be held responsible for this law. Also applies to transportation companies, ship and airline owners, captains and commanding officers, and charters, consignees, and agents of vessels and aircraft. Even travel agents and intermediate who arrange transport for undocumented immigrants can face penalties. If they knowingly or even unknowingly bring an undocumented alien to the United States without a proper visa or passport, they are in violation of this law. So it is very important to stay tuned because we're diving into it. Okay, so let me just give you a brief example. Let's say a foreign airline flies a passenger into the United States without verifying if they have a valid visa. That airline could face serious penalties under this law. Um, and obviously, people ask what are the consequences for say, okay, and violating this law can be costly. Um, Here's what happens if an undocumented alien is unlawfully brought into the United States. And normally the fine per alien is 3,000. If a fine per alien brought in, the vessel or aircraft can be detained until the fine is paid. So you're gonna get a seizure if they find an alien smuggling attempt. Um, the carrier must pay back the full ticket cost to the alien unless they were admitted or given temporary landing rights. That's if it's discovered upon the discover that it was done that way. This means that even if an airline or ship had no direct intent to break the law, they can still be held accountable for each undocumented person they bring in to the country. And let me give you an example. Imagine a shipping company unknowingly transporting 10 undocumented individuals and its cargo. That's an automatic 30,000 fines plus additional financial liabilities towards the that transportation company. Um, are there any exceptions? For say, can the fine be reduced or waived? There are some cases where fines can be reduced, refunded, or waived, but only under strict conditions. Not everything applies. If the carrier can prove due diligence, they properly screen all passengers before boarding. If the attorney general determines that special circumstances justify a reduction, but again, they have to show evidence and prove due diligence. But remember, this is not an automatic get out of jail free card. The burden of proof is on the transportation company to show that they follow all protocols. So they have to follow the protocols, otherwise, and they need to present convincing evidence that they did, in fact, try their best practices to avoid um, such irregularities of this person coming into the country illegally. Um, why this law actually matters. Um, it is pretty much is a big picture. You gotta understand it that way. So why does it matter? Um, and again, why is the law important? Because it helps again prevent human smuggling, illegal immigration, and potential national security risks. While legitimate asylum seekers have legal pathways to enter the U.S., this statute is aimed to stop undocumented arrivals that bypass immigration controls. Okay, pretty much that's why they're implemented. Um, I'll give you an example. Criminal organizations sometimes use on suspecting transportation carriers to smuggle individuals into the U.S. This law forces carriers to take responsibility and implement strict security screenings. Because that's a common fact that actually it's happening. We can give you a lot of examples of that, but it is happening. Um, Harboring and smuggling aliens, which is U.S. Code 1324. When does it come? When does it become a criminal? For say under 1324. Now let's get into the serious offenses: human smuggling and harboring under a U.S. Code 1324. It is a federal crime to smuggle an undocumented alien into the U.S. outside an official port of entry. Transport, move, or conceal an alien who enter unlawfully, encourage or help an alien enter or stay in the U.S. knowingly it is illegal, conspire or assist others in doing any of the above. So all that, those are just criminal offenses. Unlike 1323, which mainly penalizes transportation companies, 1324 criminalizes individuals and organizations who deliberately engage in or profit from human smuggling. Okay, so that's why there's 1323, 1324. What are the penalties? Violations under AUS Code 1324 come with the harsh penalties than 1323 if caught smuggling or harboring an undocumented alien, up to 5 years in federal prison per alien smuggled, fines under Title 18 of the U.S. Code, forfeiture of property, vehicles, or vessels used in smuggling if smuggling was for financial gain, up to 10 years in prison per alien. So again, financial gain, you're facing more punishment. If smuggling caused serious injury or life-threatening conditions, up to 20 years in prison. So again, it keeps adding up. If an alien dies as a result of smuggling, sentence can be life in prison or even death penalty. You know, um, and there are some examples of that. A smuggler hiding migrants in an overheated truck with no ventilation that could lead to multiple 20-year sentences or even life in prison if that occurs. A Texas border incident in 2022, a truck driver was sentenced to 30 years in prison after 53 migrants died in an overheated trailer. In California, smuggling tunnel discovery, authorities found a cross-border tunnel used for smuggling both people and contraband, leading to multiple arrests. A New York harboring case, a landlord was charged for knowingly renting properties to a smuggling network. These cases show how serious the penalties can be. So you have to be very careful, and you have to follow. You have to be alert at all times because again, whether you think you are um, you know doing something right, and then later on you become victim of a crime, and guess what? You can be facing serious um, penalties on regards to this for not establishing protocols in place. So you have to be very careful with this because customs is like you've been seeing a lot of enforcement and immigration and ICE and everybody else that's involved, Department of Justice. They've been going very hardcore at this regulation. So just stay alert and be careful. Okay. Now, business is an important risk. Now, if you're in logistics trucking or warehousing, you might be wondering, how does this apply to you? Well, there have been cases where businesses unknowingly became involved in smuggling activities. And I'm going to give you some examples that pretty much include trucking companies transporting goods that unknowingly conceal smuggle individuals, warehouses and supply chain providing space for operations linked to smuggling activities. Maritime transport, ships unknowingly carrying individuals across borders to protect your business. Due diligence is key. Conduct background checks, audits your logistics process, and report suspicious activities. Now, commercial human smuggling organizations, that's a very large scale smuggling rings and cartels. They have their own definition. When a human smuggling is part of an organized criminal operation, penalties increase dramatically. The law imposes additional 10-year sentences, additionally, 10-year sentences if the smuggler operates criminal enterprise. More than 10 undocumented aliens were transported together. The smuggling method endangered lives. Log trailers, dangerous desert crossings. The aliens had serious health risks upon entry. Okay. Um, then there comes seizure and forfeiture. Any vehicle, aircraft, or vessel used in human smuggling can be seized and forfeited to the government, even if it belongs to a third party. It doesn't matter. It becomes evidence of such a violation. Are there legal exceptions and special cases? People sometimes ask. And when does the law does not apply? There's one major exception to human smuggling laws, which is for religious organizations. But again, be careful. Under 1324A1C, religious groups can legally invite and support foreign ministers, missionaries, provide room, board, travel, and basic needs as long as the individuals serve as unpaid volunteers. But that's for them. This provision exists to protect legitimate humanitarian work. So they have this exemption, and obviously there's a process in order to comply with that. So not don't think that it applies to everybody. Unlawful employment of aliens, that'll be covered under uh, Title A U.S. Code 1324.8, and they on this section, um, where it covers about unlawful employment of aliens, of illegal aliens. It is one of the most common, besides all the topics we talked about before. But this is one of the most common ones. And now, under the new, more enforcement immigration laws, now the business, if you employ an illegal alien, now you're going to get hit with severe penalties and even jail time. Depends on the scenario, depends on the situation. So this is a very critical section, because again, a lot of industries in the United States have been going and dealing with this kind of a problem. And the fact of the matter is that upon uh, doing raids and all those sort of things, it had come to that. In fact, that the owners of such business knowingly knew that they were illegal aliens. So again, you got to be very careful with this, because it faces a severe crime and penalties. And then again, who can be held responsible for such acts? Under U.S. Code 1324A, it is illegal for any employer, company, or recruiter to knowingly hire an unauthorized alien for work in the United States. This law applies not just to direct hiring, but also to recruiting agencies that refer workers for a fee, subcontractors that supply labor, businesses using third party contractors. Because there's a lot of third party contractors there that like those workforces and stuff like that. Even though you think you feel safe because apparently you're going through this workforce, guess what? You're still become liable. No matter what, even them become liable. So again, there's no excuse for that. You still have to follow your internal protocols because at the end, you are going to be responsible for these actions. Even large corporations, small businesses, and farms are subject to this law. Okay, what is illegal under this law, per se? Uh, Obviously, number one is like hiring unauthorized aliens, which knowingly a business cannot hire an individual if they know the worker is unauthorized to work in the United States. This includes full time, part time, and temporary workers. You can, simple as that. You can avoid it and continue in employment after discovering illegal status. If an employer finds out an employee was hired legally but later lost work authorization, they must terminate employment immediately. They have to. Using contractors or subcontractors to avoid liability, which a lot of them do, a business cannot hire unauthorized workers through third party contractors to bypass the law. Okay. The law considers anyone who contracts labor knowing the workers are unauthorized to be directly liable. They're liable directly. If a factory owner hires a subcontractor to supply 50 workers and knows they are unauthorized, the factory owner is still guilty under this law. It doesn't matter if he subcontracted a third party. It doesn't matter. Employment verification requirements. What to do? Employers have to do. What do employers have to do? Obviously, to comply with everything. To comply with U.S. Code 1324A, all employers must verify an employee's legal right to work in the United States using the employment verification system. Employers must complete an I-9 form within 3 days of hiring an employee. Employers must review documents providing an employee's identification and authorization to work. Employers must retain I-9 forms for at least 3 years or 1 year after employment ends. What documents prove legal work? Authorization. A U.S. passport, green card, permanent resident card, employment authorization document, the EAD card, social security card, if not restricted, a state issued driver's license plus work authorization. Okay. So those are the documents that you have to look for. Employers cannot accept fake documents for or hire workers using forged papers. If they do, they can still be prosecuted. Okay. And then what are the penalties for hiring unauthorized workers? Well, and again, what are the consequences? What are the penalties and what are the consequences? You ask yourself. And what happens if a business is caught hiring undocumented workers? The penalties can be severe, and they increase for repeated offenders. Okay. The civil fines for each unauthorized worker hire. First violation could be $250 to $2,000 per worker. Second violation could be $2,000 to $5,000 per worker. Third violation could be $3,000 to $10,000 per worker. Okay. Obviously, you don't want to go to that direction. Criminal penalties for repeated or intentional violations. If they find a pattern of hiring unauthorized workers, okay, up to 6 months in federal prison. Fines up to $3,000 per unauthorized worker. You can face federal prison. Additional sanctions. Government contracts can be revoked. ICE may conduct worksite raids and seize business records. Employers can be barred from hiring H-2A, H-2B workers, guest workers. So again, they can go all the way under the new implementation. So all those industries, the farmers and all those agriculture industries that they hire temporary workers, you have to verify all this information because all these immigration laws are very severe and have been very tough on illegal status. It all depends on the immigration status of the person, and again, you have to verify everything. If you don't show your part as using due diligence and trying to avoid uh, of in hiring illegal aliens. Uh, if you don't show enough evidence, again, you're gonna be facing consequences. Let me give you an example. An HY food processing company was fined 95 million for hiring thousands of undocumented workers. This case shows that no business is too big to be investigated. Okay, that was like a huge case. Um, Criminal prosecution for pattern or practice violations when they find those things. Okay, when does an employer face jail time? Okay, and again, if an employer engages in a pattern of hiring unauthorized workers, they may face criminal prosecution under the federal law. Okay. Uh, and again, repeat offenders can be sentenced up to 6 months in federal prison. A business found to have a systematic hiring violation can be shut down. Employers may be forced to pay back wages and penalties. Okay. They may. Again, just try to avoid that. Why do you even want to risk that, right? Let me give you an example. A high profile case, an agriculture labor contractor was sentenced to 3 years in prison for hiring 500 undocumented workers and forging employment documents. He was caught doing that. So again, be careful. Exemptions and good faith compliance. You know, how can employers avoid penalties? It's very simple. How can you avoid penalties? And again, uh, an employer can defend themselves only if they prove they acted in good faith. How? How are they going to prove that? Obviously, using e-verify to confirm worker eligibility, keeping proper ID documentation for all employees, notifying us immediately if fraudulent documents are discovered, taking corrective action when unauthorized employment is detected. Um, those are the cases where they can see that you're actually doing proper care and using your entire due diligence in trying to avoid um, falling into this irregularities under these new immigration laws. Now, a business that follows proper hiring procedures but unknowingly hires someone using a fake documents might be able to avoid penalties if they can prove compliance with the law. Okay, so again, it's a case by case. Okay, uh, immigration related employment discrimination. 8 U.S. Code 1324B. Okay, what is considered illegal discrimination? Okay, so many people assume that immigration laws only target illegal hiring, but they also protect legal workers from discrimination based on nationality or immigration status. Okay, and obviously, under AUS Code 1324B, it is illegal for an employer to refuse to hire or fire someone based on their national origin or citizenship status unless required by law. Discriminating hiring, recruiting, or referrals based on immigration status retaliate against an employee who reports immigration related discrimination. Request excessive documentation beyond what is required for employment eligibility. Okay, because um, some employers do go sometimes way beyond, to avoid, hiring that person. If a company refuses to hire a lawful permanent resident in favor of a U.S. citizen when both are equally qualified, they could be in violation of this law, because it can be considered discriminating, So, who is protected under this law? Who can file a complaint? The law applies to most businesses, but has some exemptions. Here's who is protected, under this law: U.S. citizens and nationals, lawful permanent residents, green card holders, refugees, asylees, certain temporary residents as well, um, they're protected. Who is not protected? Obviously, undocumented workers are not protected under this law. Small businesses with 3 or fewer employees are exempt from certain provisions. Government contractors may have specific legal requirements to prefer U.S. citizens. I'll give you an example. A refugee with legal work authorization cannot be rejected for a job solely because they are not a U.S. citizen. That will be a violation under this law. Exceptions to discrimination claims. When can employers legally favor U.S. citizens? And there are some exceptions where employers are allowed to prefer U.S. citizens over non-citizens, and obviously, which this includes uh, when and only when required by federal, state, or local law. When the employer has a contract with the U.S. government, when national security is involved, if the employer prefers a U.S. citizen over an equally qualified non-citizen, but cannot refuse to hire all non-citizens outright. Okay. Um, let me give you an example. A defense contractor building fighter jets for the U.S. Air Force may be legally required to only hire U.S. citizens due to security clearance requirements. Okay. Employment documentation discrimination. Can employers demand extra proof of work authorization? Which is one of the most common violations of this law, is documents abuse when employers ask for more documents than require or reject valid employment authorization documents because there's been a lot of cases filed under this rule. Employers cannot demand additional immigration paperwork beyond what is legally required. Refuse to accept documents that appear genuine. Ask for specific types of documents when verifying work authorization. Okay, simple as that. Any doubts? Employer must accept any document that meets the I-9 verification requirements. Meaning what? People ask, what is that? If a company tells a legal immigrant they must provide both a green card and a social security card, when one valid document is enough, they could be violating the law. So again, there's an example of what they're talking about. Uh, if you're trying to avoid hiring that employee, and if you know for a fact that that employee meets all the requirements, with only one document, you don't need to ask for more evidence or documents. That document is enough once it's verified completely. Penalties for discrimination violations. What are the consequences? If an employer violates a U.S. Code 324B, they can face serious fine, even lawsuits, and government penalties. Okay. Fines for employment discrimination. First offense is $250 to $2,000 per violation. Second offense is $2,000 to $5,000 per violation. A third offense is $3,000 to $10,000 per violation. Other penalties required to hire. Other penalties required to rehire wrongfully terminated workers. Back pay for lost wages, mandatory anti-discrimination training, posting notices for employees on their legal right. And let me give you an example. A tech company that fired an employee because of their lawful immigration status had to pay $100,000 in penalties and back pay after being sued under this law. Okay, so again, just be careful. How employees can report discrimination and how to file a complaint. If a worker believes they have been discriminated against, they can file a charge with the department, obviously the Department of Justice, Special Counsel for Immigration Related Unfair Employment Practices, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission for cases involving national origin discrimination. And but obviously you have to understand that there's time limits for filing. Complaints must be filed within 180 days of the violation. Okay, if you feel that you're being discriminated, You can file within 180 days. An employer who retaliates against an employee for reporting discrimination may face even steeper fines and legal consequences. So there you go. So immigration document fraud, which is 8 U.S. Code 1324C. This is with documents literally on fraud. What is document fraud? Obviously, fraudulent immigration documents pose a major risk to national security and employment verification processes. Under 8 U.S. Code 324C, it is illegal to knowingly forge, alter, or counterfeit any document to satisfy an immigration requirement. Use or attempt to use a fraudulent document to obtain immigration benefits, poses or accepts fake documents for employment or immigration purposes, provides someone else's legal document, like a passport or work visa, for illegal use, as is other in preparing or filing fake immigration applications. Okay, let me give you an example. If someone uses a fake green card to get a job or sells counterfeit work permits to unauthorized workers, they are violating this law. Common types of immigration document frauds. What are the most common offenses? For say, well, here are some of the most common immigration document fraud schemes that the immigration have seen through the course of the practice. Obviously, one of them is fake green cards, work permits, counterfeit documents sold on the black market to unauthorized workers, fraudulent social security numbers, stolen or fake social security numbers used to obtain employment, alter or stolen passport visas, genuine documents modified or used by someone other than the rightful owner, a marriage fraud, fake marriages arranged solely for immigration benefits, employer fraud, businesses knowingly accepting fake documents to hire unauthorized workers. All these have been going on. Okay, that's why they're telling it. A factory owner knowingly accepts fake work permits from employees to avoid hiring restrictions. That's document fraud under this law. Okay, penalties for immigration document fraud within the same section. What are the penalties? And again, what are the consequences? Because for everything is penalties and consequences. Don't think you're getting away with it. Immigration document fraud is taken very seriously, and the penalties increase with repeat offenses. Okay. Civil penalties for document fraud. First offense is 250 to 2,000 per fake document. Repeat offense is 2,000 to 5,000 per fake document. Criminal penalties for fraudulent immigration applications. If convicted, a person can face up to 5 years in federal prison for preparing or submitting fake documents. Up to 15 years in prison for repeat offenders involved in large-scale fraud. Fines under Title 18 of the U.S. Code. And let me give you a brief example of that too. An immigration consultant who charges immigrants thousands of dollars to submit fraudulent visa applications can be sentenced to 15 years in prison and banned from ever filing immigration paperwork again. And I believe they have caught some of those. You know, that's why they are examples of it. You know, because they've seen all that. Government enforcement and investigations. How do authorities catch document fraud? Sometimes you think, oh, we're gonna get away with it, but guess what? No, you're not. Immigration document fraud is heavily investigated by ICE, which is Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And obviously, they conduct raids and audits to uncover document fraud. United States Citizenship and Immigration Services screens visa applications for forged or fraudulent documents. Department of Justice prosecutes large-scale documented fraud cases. Customs and Border Protection detects fraudulent travel documents at ports of entry. All these agencies are involved in document fraud detection. Let me give you an example. ICE raided a document fraud ring in California that sold over 10,000 fake green cards for thousands of dollars each. The leaders were sentenced to decades in prison and fined millions. They were fined and sentenced to decades in prison. Uh, Defenses, and we're going to talk about defenses and exemptions. Are there any legal defenses? Some exemptions exist where individuals may not be prosecuted under this law. Okay, and again, it just because it means what it means, don't go about it. Law enforcement and intelligence operations. If U.S. government agencies create or use fake documents for investigation, they are exempt. Asylum seekers. If an individual uses fake documents to flee persecution and is later granted asylum, the attorney general may waive penalties. That's another type of case. An example: a journalist fleeing political persecution uses a fake passport to escape a dangerous country. If granted asylum, they may not face document fraud penalties. Um, how to report immigration document fraud if you detect it, and obviously stopping fraudulent immigration practices. Uh, if you suspect immigration document fraud, you can report it to ICE, Homeland Security Investigations (HSI), the tip line, the Department of Justice Fraud Investigation Unit, the Department of Labor. A fraud is tied to employment. All these agencies get involved with that. And let me give you another example. A worker finds out their employer is using fake work visas to hire unauthorized employees. They can report the fraud anonymously to ICE or the Department of Justice. Okay, there are some people that you know that can be U.S. citizen working for your company, and they find out that you're hiring all these people, and you know they can't work for you. They're illegal, and you see fake documents. Well, guess what? They reported you. Uh, we're gonna talk another section, which is what happens when you uh, what happens when you fail to depart, and this is comes under AUS Code 1324D, and we're gonna talk about this subject. What happens when someone ignores a deportation order? Um, we're gonna talk about it, and stay tuned for the end of the video because I'm gonna give you some very good tips on how to avoid trying to um, get penalized or anything like that. I'm gonna try to explain to you briefly of what are the best practices you can use, establish them. I'm sure a lot of companies do have established something in place already because there's been going on. There's a lot of things going on right now in our country, and there's a lot of companies that have been rated, and a lot of owners, the company owners have been gotten into a lot of problems, a lot of legal issues, and this is the reason why we're putting this content out here right now today because again, um, there's a lot of industries, there's a lot of people out there that they don't know the consequences or they have no idea towards what's going to happen to them. They think that, well, I'm not going to face anything because of this and that. But guess what? No, everything has changed and the laws have been implementing a lot every day, every you know um month, uh this past years. They've been implementing many new laws and they've been enforcing them and they've been adding new wording on the laws. And bottom line is they're being very enforceable. So that is the reason why we're putting this content, uh, because not only that, not only the hiring, but it also talks about our main concern is also to bring out this matter to all the industry because again, uh, we're focused more on the international trade everything when we deal with import and exports. And all these laws, they have a meaning that uh, links and reflects back to importers and exporters. Because why? Because importers and exporters hire logistics companies, transportation companies, and again, I'm not saying they're bad companies, but again, there's a lot of companies out there. The fact of the matter is that there has been a lot of detainees on checkpoints and everything, um, of drivers getting detained because they're smuggling illegal aliens, and then owners. We get calls from owners. You know, very disappointed and very scared sometimes because obviously their equipment, their more than anything, the equipment, besides the fact that being seized, uh, is the company reputation as well. Because those drivers, represent legally that company, and the company reputation stands for a lot. And obviously, when those company owners face those uh, real situations, uh, they get affected by it because they become victims of such actions by such negligent drivers. But again, in this industry, we know that it happens. And again, it can happen to anybody. Again, you know, everything is transportation, logistics, everything. That's how uh, you know people that you know do catch in a frequently regular basis. They use all those modes of transport and all those type of businesses, like warehouses and stuff like that. Stash houses and everything. And we know how the system works because we've been seeing it day by day on the news. How things get discovered and how things happen and everything. And again, uh, what people don't seem to realize is that they're playing with human beings. They're playing with their lives. Because again, I've seen a lot of cases. I heard it. I've seen a lot of cases. I've revealed a lot of cases where you know even little kids have died. Because they left them on their free will. Like they didn't care. Like, and we've been seeing a lot of this type of activity, especially in our borders. So for those that are victims, we're trying to put this content, especially for the people that do the legal everything do the legal way. Because if you do uh, everything the wrong way, well, you need to pay attention to this content because again, at the end, it don't matter. Bottom line, everything goes directly to you. You hire them. You're paying them, so you're hiring them. So it doesn't matter what skills you're gonna give. You are gonna be the responsible party. It doesn't matter. You can hire like a third party recruiter, like they say. It doesn't matter. You're still gonna be liable. You're gonna be liable because you're liable for it. And meaning what? You need to be responsible, and you need to uh, implement best practices to follow the protocols and try to investigate and avoid all this type of problem. But again, this is the reason why we're doing this content. It's something that we need to put out there because again, we've been seeing it grow uh, every day, every day, there's no such day that this happens that where they stop a smuggling attempt, or uh, they caught a smuggling attempt, or they were chasing, and sometimes within the chase, people die due to the crash scene because a lot of them have crashed and people have died. they're human beings. You're playing with human beings, and not only that, like you're you're gaining from a human being, to your financial interest. So again, uh, I don't even know what to say about this, but again, it's a human life. So I literally, uh, I don't know. I don't see how people can actually play with human lives like that. Believe me, again, I mean, that's why we applaud all the federal agencies that you know avoid all these uh, activities that's been going on lately within the past year or so, that has been increasing a lot. And again, we just want to put this content out there for those people that, if you ever think about doing such illegal activity, believe me, you're gonna have it. You're gonna have real problems. And for the people that want to learn how to avoid it, this is where you're gonna learn it. So I'm just gonna briefly get a minute break, and I'm gonna get back at you. But please stay to the end, because uh, our next topic is gonna be what happens when someone ignores a deportation order, and we're gonna continue. And believe me, you're gonna learn a lot. If you have no knowledge on regards to this type of immigration law, you're gonna learn a lot from it. Okay, and again, we're gonna give you the best advices that we can give you at the end of the video. So stick around with us, because it's gonna get good. Okay, don't go anywhere. Get comfortable on your couch, wherever you are viewing this video. And again, if this is the first time you're here with us, please um, give us a thumb like. Like our website, like our channel, and support us, because we're putting more content. And it's content that again, it's for the sole purpose of educational. We want to bring it out there for you all to learn. The people don't have knowledge of it, and the people they do. If you're doing something wrong, or you're doing it wrong, well, hopefully this content will um change something about anything that you're doing wrong, or whatever the case is. Or if you had a case, well, at least you learned something from it. But again, the sole purpose is to um, take this content out there for educate everybody, and to protect all those industries and everybody else. And again, um, we're gonna continue right now. So in the meantime, give me a minute, and then we'll be back. We're gonna be back. Okay, I'll see you right now. Okay, we're gonna continue where we left up, and we're gonna continue where What happens when someone ignores a deportation order? Okay. What are the consequences? And, you know, the procedures, process, exactly. When an undocumented immigrant or visa overstay is given a final order of removal, they are legally required to leave the United States under a U.S. Code 1324D. An individual violates the federal law if they willfully refuse to leave after receiving a removal order, fail to apply for necessary travel documents in a timely manner, fail to show up for deportation when instructed by authorities, conspire or take action to delay or obstruct their departure. And let me give you an example of this. If someone is ordered to leave the U.S. and refuses to board the deportation flight, they can be fined daily under this law. Okay, so if you have a deportation order, you have to leave. What are the financial penalties for failure to depart? Um, and obviously, what are the consequences? Again, you know, so many people think that ignoring a deportation order just means they remain in the U.S. illegally, but the law imposes civil penalties for refusing to comply. Okay, uh, civil fines or for refusing to leave up to 500 per day for every day they remain in the U.S. in violation of the removal order. These fines accumulate daily, meaning an individual who stays for just 1 year past the deportation date could owe over $180,000 in fine. This penalty is separate from criminal charges, meaning it can be applied on top of any other violation under the immigration law. Okay. And let me give you another example. A person who refuses to leave for 6 months after their removal order could owe 90,000 in fine, even if they aren't charged with any other crimes. Okay. So how does the government enforces the protection orders? Can someone avoid removal by ignoring the order per se? People ask. And obviously, refusing to comply with the removal order does not mean someone can avoid deportation forever. Okay. Um, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which is ICE, monitors individuals who fail to leave. Warrants can be issued for immigration fugitives who ignore their removal orders. DHS may increase enforcement actions for repeat violators, including arrest and detention. Fines are enforced through civil litigation, and wage garnishments. Okay. And let me give you another example. If an undocumented individual fails to report for deportation, ICE may issue an immigration fugitive warrant leading to the arrest, detention, and forced removal. Simple as that. They're not gonna be, you know, babysitting. Can someone challenge a deportation order? And not only that, are there other legal options to delay or stop the removal? You know, individuals with final removal orders do have legal options in some cases. Not all the cases, but in some cases. You know, so the possible defenses to deportation, asylum, and protection claims. If someone fears persecution in their home country, they may apply for asylum, withholding, or removal or protection under the Convention Against Torture, motions to reopen or reconsider. If new evidence arises, an individual may file a motion to reopen their case. Appeals to the Board of Immigration Appeals. Some removal orders can be appealed, but the window for appeal is very short. A stay of removal request in rare cases, ICE or federal court may grant a temporary delay of deportation. I'm going to give you a sample. A deportee who fears persecution in their home country may request asylum or withholding of removal, but they must do so before their deportation deadline. So you have to do it before the deadline. Okay, there are some, it all depends. And again, right now, how things are, it's very hard. And consequences of ignoring removal order. What are the consequences? People sometimes they don't seem to understand. What happens if someone stays in the United States illegally? You know, Ignoring a removal order has long-term consequences beyond just simple fines. Okay, long-term consequences, permanent bars to future immigration benefits like visas or green cards. You know, higher risk of being detained by ICE, ineligibility for work permits or legal status adjustments, increased legal penalties if caught in another immigration violation. Um, and let me give you a brief sample of that. Someone who overstays after receiving a final removal order may be banned from re-entering the U.S. for life. Okay, for life. How to comply with the removal order legally? Okay, so again, you don't want to stay. What should someone do if they receive a um, removal order? If someone receives a final order or of a removal, they should leave the U.S. voluntarily if given the option to avoid future penalties. Apply for necessary travel documents to comply with departure requirements. Consult an immigration attorney to see if they qualify for legal relief. Report to ICE as instructed if required to self deport. You're just going to leave the country. And let me give you an example. An individual given 30 days to depart should follow the order to avoid fines and future immigration consequences. Okay, so they give you a deadline. And what are the best practices for compliance? Best for compliance with U.S. immigration laws, sections 1323, 1324D, to ensure compliance with federal immigration laws and avoid severe penalties. Individual businesses and transportation companies must follow best practices tailored to each legal provision. Here, I'm going to give you some topics about some best practices that you can follow along and try to implement them and try to follow them. If you knew them already and you have in place, great, awesome. Protect your company. You gotta protect your industry, and you know, and your daily living. Because again, everything can end if you are caught in any of these violations of the immigration laws. I mean, we read them, and I briefly try to explain little by little, and make sure that you stay away from violating any of the laws. You know. So under AUS Code 1323, unlawful transportation of aliens, per se, best practices for transportation companies, airlines, and the shipping firms, all those companies, passenger verification protocols. You have to establish that. Implement a strict policy to verify passports and visas before boarding. Training and compliance checks. Regularly train staff to identify valid versus fraudulent travel documents. Electronic verification systems. Use government databases such as CBP's Advanced Passenger Information Systems, APIS, to confirm passenger eligibility before departure. Maintain documentation. Keep record of verification procedures for each passenger in case of audits or investigations. Designated compliance officers. Appoint a team or individual responsible for compliance with U.S. immigration transport laws. You need to have all this in place. Avoid. Because if it comes down to that, you got to protect yourself. Example compliance strategy. An airline should require that every check-in agent is trained in document verification techniques. Airlines should refuse boarding to any traveler without a valid documentation and maintain detailed logs of verification procedures. Okay, it's very important. AUS Code 1324, human smuggling, harboring best practices for avoiding criminal liability. How do you avoid that? No assistance to unauthorized alien. Avoid knowingly transporting, concealing, or harboring undocumented individuals. Conduct due diligence on tenants and workers. or you rent. If renting property or employing individuals, always verify legal status through e-verified and background checks. Avoid indirect involvement in smuggling, even providing logistical support such as transportation or housing to an unauthorized alien can result in liability. Clear policies for transportation services. Train all the drivers and employees to refuse transportation services to undocumented individuals. Report suspicious activities. If employees suspect smuggling activities, report them to the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, known as ICE. Um, and let me give you an example of compliance. Example compliance strategy. A trucking company should conduct background checks on subcontractors and have a strict policy prohibiting the transportation of unauthorized individuals. Okay. So, owner, you need to protect yourself. AUS Code 1324A, unlawful employment of aliens. What are the best practices for employers to avoid penalties? Obviously, use e-verify. Enroll in the e-verify program to electronically confirm employment eligibility. Complete I-9 forms correctly. Ensure that all Form I-9 documents are filled out accurately for every employee within the 3 days of hiring. Maintain employee records. Keep I-9 documents for at least 3 years after hiring or 1 year after termination, whichever is later. No discrimination in hiring. Employers should apply the same hiring standards for all applicants, regardless of nationality or perceived immigration status. Conduct periodic internal audits. Regularly review employees' files to ensure continued compliance with federal hiring laws. Avoid third-party hiring loopholes. Do not rely on contractors or staffing agencies that may employ unauthorized workers to avoid direct liability. Okay, so avoid them. Okay. Example of compliance. A construction company should assign a compliance officer to oversee hiring and ensure all I-9 forms are correctly completed. Random audits should be performed to verify continued compliance. Okay. Now, a U.S. Code 1324B, immigration related employment discrimination. What are the best practices for avoiding discrimination hiring? Okay. Obviously, follow the anti discrimination policies. Ensure the hiring, promotion, and termination decisions are based on skills, experience, and qualification rather than national origin or citizenship status. Accept any valid work authorization. Employers cannot demand specific documents requiring a green card instead of an employment authorization document. Educate human resources teams on immigration laws. Provide regular training to HR professionals on hiring rights and restrictions. Implement a compliant resolution process. Have a clear, confidential reporting process for employees who experience immigration related discrimination. Okay. Um, Let me give you an example of compliance. An HR department should develop an anti discrimination policy and ensure all recruiters undergo annual training on employment rights for non citizens. You know, you got to train your employees. AUS Code 1324C, immigration document fraud. What are the best practices for employers, HR professionals, and compliance officers? You know, obviously verify the authenticity of the employee documents, cross-check identification with DHS databases to confirm legitimacy, avoid accepting fake or altered documents, ensure all hiring managers receive training on identifying fraudulent documents, report suspected fraud if an employer or HR team discovers an employee use fraudulent documents. They should immediately report it to ICE. Do not assist in document fraud. Employers should never help employees obtain or submit false documents. Okay, be careful with that. Example of compliance. A staffing agency should implement a two-step verification process for reviewing work authorization documents, including third-party screening, a U.S. Code 324D failure to depart, overstaying removal order. Now we're going to talk about another regulation. What are the best practices for legal compliance? Okay. Monitor compliance with departure orders. If an employee or tenant is under a removal order, they must leave the U.S. within the required time frame. Follow reporting obligations. Employers or landlords who become aware of someone failing to comply with an immigration order should report it to ICE. Avoid providing continued support. Do not provide employment, housing, or transportation to individuals under a final deportation order. Okay, because you're going to get in trouble. Be careful. Let me give you an example of compliance. A business that hires visa holders should track visa expiration dates and notify employees when their status is set to expire to ensure timely compliance with U.S. immigration laws. So you still have a, uh, a compliance in force. General compliance strategies for all the sectors. Obviously, stay updated on immigration laws, regulations change frequently. Remember, employers and compliance officers should stay informed about updates from United States Customs Service, the DHS, and ICE. Develop a written compliance plan, establish clear policies and procedures for immigration compliance, conduct regular compliance audits, hire legal experts to periodically review hiring, employment, and operational records. Seek legal advice when necessary. Consult with an immigration attorney to address any uncertainties regarding hiring or documentation requirements. Educate employees about immigration responsibilities. Conduct annual training sessions on compliance with U.S. immigration laws. Okay, so all those things, make sure you have them in place. Avoid problems, legal problems. You know, get understand that compliance with U.S. immigration laws requires proactive policies, diligent hiring practices, and ongoing training for businesses, transportation services, and employers. The penalties for violations can be severe, including fines, asset forfeiture, and even prison sentences. You go to prison. So following best practices is very crucial. You can understand that. These laws right now, they're like literally very hardcore going at it. So far we explored uh, a U.S. Code section 1323 through 1324D, covering everything from human smuggling, harboring, and employer penalties to document fraud and anti-discrimination provisions to the best practices. These laws are obviously actively enforced with severe and legal financial consequences. Um, if have questions or thoughts on today's topic, please drop a comment below. Again, if you found this information valuable, please hit the like button and subscribe to JJ International for in-depth analysis of U.S. trade, customs, and federal regulations. Turn on notifications so you never miss an update on critical compliance and enforcement issues. Okay? Please do so. Until the next time, stay informed, stay compliant, and we'll see you in the next video very soon. Stay tuned. Don't forget to like our channel. Until next time, guys. See you later.